Hello guys, my name is Pavel from blenderfreak.com and welcome to the part number 52 of the Node Editor tutorial series, in which we are going to focus only on the documentation. So in the part 27 we set up the Python package and also we set up the documentation with Sphinx. If you do want to follow along and don't have this set up, you can just quickly open up your console and pip install Sphinx, since we are going to use Sphinx. And to get to the same result as here, you can just create a new directory for the documentation. I do already have the docs, so let's make their docs2. And if you go to the docs2 and type Sphinx quick start, what you want to do is to separate the source and build directories. So yes, and enter up your project name and author's name, and the rest doesn't matter. And if we do click here again, you can see we got the docs2, we got the build directory, the source directory, basically the same as the example above. So this way you are going to get the same starting point as we are in this tutorial, and let's go ahead and write some documentation. Okay, so in the first place, let's have a look at our documentation. And we need to build it. So if we go to the node editor /docs, you should be able to write make clean and also make HTML. Just like that. Perfect, and everything got built. So this is our current documentation. We got index, module index, which is not working currently, and here's welcome, indices and table. Basically, the documentation is still empty right now. However, we can automatize this one because we are going to do that several times. So let's create a new Python file and call it build. Just like that. And create a new configuration. And let's call that build docs. And the script path is going to be node editor docs build, and is going to run from the docs directory. Perfect. And in our script we can import os and say os.system and run make clean, and also os system make html, just like that. Perfect. And now with shift F10 I should be able to build the documentation directly from PyCharm, which is perfect. However, let's add some files first. So last part we created this coding standards.md. This is written in the Markdown language. I used some notation here, and also I found a beautiful Markdown cheat sheet. So if you wanna use this one, the link is going to be in the description. Here is a bunch of useful stuff you can use when you are writing with the Markdown language. If you want to use the restructured text, so RST files, here is another awesome quick reference. So for example, comments are written like this, ... / typical result, everything is described here. So if you are interested in the more details how to write the files, let's check these links in the description. However, let's go here. So first of all, I'm going to open the configuration file, and we need to create some documentation for our classes. And for that, we need to use a new extension in the Sphinx documentation. So first of all, here is version, so let's write 0.9.0, and in the extensions let's add sphinx.ext.autodoc, just like that. We can also use many other extensions, like for example to-do or coverage. And to be able to use the Markdown language, we should type common mark, just like that. Perfect. And this way we can use md files once we allow them as a source suffix, which is here. So instead of just having RST files, let's enable the md also. and we should set up our autodoc. So definitely in our case I do want to keep the member order by the source, not by alphabet or anything else. So we can put in the setup here autodoc member order is going to equal by source. And this is everything, I guess. So to create our API documentation, we can call Sphinx dash apdoc, and the destination directory should be source /rst, and the source directory will be /node editor, which is our path to our source here. Great, and now when I run it, I should be able to see two new files. So rst, here is modules. This is describing the node editor module itself, and this one is containing all of the classes and modules here. So auto module documentation is being generated for this current file. So now when I build the documentation, I will not see anything new because we do not have any link to these files in our index. And this is the place where we are starting our documentation. So let's go here and we can add the coding standards. And also we can add rst/node editor. And now I can build the documentation again. So we got some side packages, parser, user warning, okay, and pickling environment. Modules.rst isn't included in any doc tree, so this file is not going to be visible in our documentation. And let's have a look. Now when I reload, you can see at our index I do have coding standards. This is the file we were writing last time. And also here is a new node editor package. And this looks like this. All of our classes empty without any documentation because we were not using any javadocs or Google documentation type or Sphinx documentation, nothing. So most of it is not actually documented. So we did a bad job when we were creating this. However, we were refactoring it a lot of times, so it doesn't actually matter. We can do that at this point of time. Okay, the modules here is working and the search is probably not. However, I do want to be able to just look at this one single file to contain one single class, and I don't want to see everything inside one huge file. So let's do some changes here. And if we go back to the terminal, I will just print help, so we can have a look what other options we do have here in our apdoc. So the -f is for overwrite existing files. We can use that now. And here is -e, put documentation for each module into its own page, which is perfect. This is definitely something we are going to use. And docs, we are not using it, so don't create a table of contents file. We will use this also. And here is a bunch of other options too. So we were here basically. We need to add -e, -huge T, and F for force rewriting all of the files. Let's run it again, and as you can see, we got a bunch of the files for each of our file in our package. That's great. So here is modules. Great. And I guess we don't need this file anymore, so I can delete that. Nice. And here is node editor rst. So let's try to build the docs. Great. Here we do have submodules and module content. Nice. However, here we do have one or two classes in one single page, which is much more readable. Definitely I do not need to put everything underneath the submodules, and also I do not like the node editor dot the name of the file. So to fix that, we can just remove the submodules here. I can rename this to be package with capital P, and just for now let's delete the module content. Great, and let's do rebuild again, and let's have a look how it looks like. Okay, great, and now when we go to the node content widget package, you can see we got two classes, and this is being auto-generated without any docstrings because we haven't written any of them. So let's go ahead and open them up. This is how the actual auto module looks like. It automatically generates the module documentation, also the classes and all of the members here. So let's open up the node content widget. And as you can see, we do not have any docstrings here. So in the first place, we should write as a first line comment and dash star dash encoding and set it to UTF-8 just to say what encoding our file is using. Then we can create a module docstring, so module docs. Also here underneath the class we can create a class docs, and here are our methods. In Python we can tell that the node parameter here should be of a type, and in our case I will use a string with node because I don't want to import node class which we wrote, so I will just put it as a string, and the parent is QWidget. And this method is not returning anything. However, we can again write a docstring and say default constructor, for example init UI, setting up layout, and editing flag here, for example, we can say that the value is of type bool and it's returning nothing. However, for example, this deserialize method is returning a value. So data is going to be dictionary, hash map is again dictionary, and this method is returning, and it's written like this, a boolean value. So we can write default deserialize method, please override me. And the same thing can go for the serialized. This one is returning ordered dictionary. So ordered dictionary like this. That's great. And one beautiful feature about PyCharm is that it can auto-generate the documentation for you. So instead of writing exactly one line comment like we did here, we can just 3 times press the quote key, and then when you press enter, it will automatically generate return and the data. So let me cut this line here, and here when I press enter, as you can see, we got generated param data, param hash map, and also return, which is great. And beautiful thing about PyCharm is it's actually allows you to set up the docstring type. So if you go to settings, to the tools and the Python integrated tools, you can set up the docstring format. Here I do have set restructured text, so RST, and you can also use NumPy. So that would look like this. And also you could set, or you can set Google, and some people like this better because it's more readable in a console line or in the terminal. It depends completely on you which one you do want to use. So let me just select it back to the restructured text. Now I can press enter. Here I can write a comment, and there should be one empty line between the param data. Also you could use something like type data, and put in, for example, dictionary like this. This way you can say that it's the data is by the type of dictionary. So the param data contains data in Python dictionary format to be deserialized. So let me generate the documentation again, and let's have a look how it looks like. And as you can see, here is the module docs, here is the class docs, here is unit UI, here is the returning value or the parameter value, here is collection or the dictionary, the returning value, here is also returning value, and this way the parameters will look like. So now it's time to create some meaningful docstrings, and I went ahead and I already did that. However, first off, I want to show you where I was inspired. So this is Pillow, my favorite library for creating or handling with images in Python, and I do kind of like how this documentation is written, also with the code examples and everything. Here you can see we can use warnings, for example. Also there is somewhere here below a note, and all of this can be used. So instead of trying to figure out how it works, here in the documentation for the APDoc, however, I do suggest go through this one also. Here, for example, if you find a pillow on Read the Docs, again the links will be in the description. Here is edit on GitHub. So if you click this link, you will get directly to the GitHub page, and when you look at the raw file, you can see they are using .py module and setting current module for pill.image, so they can later use, for example, auto function here, and instead of writing the whole path to the method, they just can write the method name. Also, this is how the note is being written. The warning is basically the same. Here is the reference for another class, etc. This is how you can write a Python code block, for example, here with everything, and here is again auto methods. So if we have a look, this page, single page, is constructed out of examples, functions, and any of them can be viewed, and then they basically look like this. So I went ahead and finished up our node editor node content widget module. So let me build that and let's have a look. We do have the encoding. Here is the same thing, the module documentation. Here is the class documentation. One thing I will note definitely is when I do refresh now, as you can see, we got init UI, and here is a link to a class called node editor node graphical node QDM graphics node. So to be able to write a shortcut like this one, note that here is a tilde sign. So if you use tilde sign like this, it will only write out the name of the class. However, for example, we got a parm value, also here is return, here is R type, and I'm noting the types with double grave, so they can look in the documentation just like that. Also, every reference to the qtext edit and other methods and etc. are written with these double grave icons or characters, as you wish. So basically, just like that, you can write the docstring. So again, the compiled version looks like this. Great, and now we just need to fix somehow this node editor package and the beginning of this one. So if we go to the RST node content widget, we can just do basically the same thing, which is here in the documentation of below. Again, we can copy this beginning here, and we can say that this module is node editor dot node content widget. Let's copy that around, just like that, and just instead of writing node editor, we can do column pi column mod column again, and put this in the grave characters with capital module. Great. And this way we can do the auto module documentation. If you don't want to do that, just like this, or we want to sort the classes by ourselves, we can also go ahead and, for example, below the module write, for example, the warning, and write this is a warning. Now when we compile, and go back, and I do refresh, then you can see here is a warning. The node content widget module is being written like a code, which looks much more nicer, and also that is done here. Since there is no reason to watch me write every single file, I went off screen and started to write the documentation. So this is basically how, for example, the node edge module looks like. The page is divided into the edge type constants and edge class. So if we have a look in PyCharm, the edge looks like this. I'm using the auto module here, and I commented out the members and undoc members and show inheritance because I don't need that, and I don't want to split the classes into the file yet. Instead of that, I'm using a reference. So here is something, some point I can reference later. And also I created two subheaders with edge type constants with auto attribute, and I'm directly accessing the edge type direct and Bezier, and also the edge class. And here I use the auto class with members and undoc members and show inheritance. So I can see everything which is inside of the edge class. So this is way how you can define a link point. Let's call it link point with the underscore. And if we have a look in the documentation, before I set encoding, this is changed to coding because it's supposed to be coding. Anyways, if you go, for example, here, you can see when I define the parameter edge type, I say that it's a constant determining something, the type of the edge, and see the reference to the edge type constants. This is being shown as a link to this place, exactly here. Perfect. You need to have a blank space between, so just remember on that. And also, if you noticed, I removed one line I had here before, also here. It was PyModule node editor.node content widget, since Sphinx was complaining that the module is being defined twice. So here is another definition of the same module, so it didn't like it. So just use one of them. Next thing I changed is the position of the setters and getters. So I do like to have start socket and edge type just above any other function. So you can simply switch the position here in the source code. Also, you can notice we are using colon, getter and setter here. It's defined only on the property, and the setter doesn't have any docstring because it doesn't need to. And this is a change that goes through each of the files, so I changed the coding standards accordingly to that. So first is going to be the constructor, then the magic methods and getters and setters, and then the rest. The next thing I did was I tried to reference every type I can here in the parameters, and also here you can see here is a class for representing edge in node editor, and I did want to have the parameters for the constructor to be visible. To be able to see that, you need to go to the configuration, and also I added autoclass content both, which force Sphinx to put the parameters of the constructor underneath each class. I also added the extension Sphinx RTD theme just to be sure, but actually this one is not necessary, I guess. Another thing you can notice is here at the end I got awesome documentation for the serialize and deserialize methods, and also if we have a look on something undocumented like the node, for example, you can find out that the serialize is already filled out, also the deserialize. The way how I did that is pretty simple, because the inheritance is actually working here. So you just need to go to the serializable class, which is here, and write the documentation for all of the properties here, or the methods. Once this definition is the same, so I basically copied and fixed every deserialized definition in our classes, just like that. I don't need to write the docstrings anymore, because it would be taken, or it will be taken from the node serialize method, which is perfectly great. Another thing I noticed is that I use on every class I use the restore ID, and that was previously missing here in the serializable deserialize. It was missing here, so I added it to be consistent, and therefore I could use this kind of the docstrings in any of our methods and classes where it's actually derived. So that's the node, it's also the scene, and many others. Another thing I tried to do is mark these true, false, and I should also mark the bool like a code, and this is done just by putting it into double grave, just like that. So if I compile it again, I should be able to see bool like this. Also I should do the same with the order dictionary, so I will fix that later. Another thing to note is the serializable module and the class. Here you can see we got the module document string, and here is a class document string, and I wanted to put the ID here. However, if you have a look, the ID is a default constructor automatically creates data which are common to any serializable object. And if you have a look, here is the default constructor, but still I do miss the ID. So the ID is being added actually here in the RST this way. Here is the auto class with members, undocs and everything, and here is the by attribute ID, and here is the docstring you see in the documentation. So I added the ID manually. Another interesting file is the utils. By default you will get just these three methods, and we do use something special here, which is a pp, which is the shortcut for our pretty printer. And if we have a look in the utils, the pp is just defined on one single line as a reference to this function, and it doesn't have documentation. So this is the same case. I just went to the node editor.utils rst and added auto function pp and wrote the description here. So I guess the only thing left is just to finish the documentation. I hope it was useful for you, and see you at the next part.